news, breaking news, breaking news, breaking news. Check it out. P. Diddy's case is going to the jury right now. They did the closing statements. We're going to break it down, but there's a lot of things I'm seeing on YouTube, even from lawyers, that I don't agree with. And I'm not disrespecting no lawyer, but I got to give the facts what it is. I laid in prison for 26 and a half years fighting the same RICO type charge with the 848 CCE. They both have violations in it. In the CCE, it's a continuous series of violations. In the RICO, it's just a violation that carried more than a year and a day is how it can be used, and it has to pertain to the scheme and network and functioning of the trial. Now, let's sit back. If y'all want to get the real, let's get this thing started, man. All right. All right, you know what it is. Unique Mecca Audio, man. We in the house. We got Bruce Willis up here. He said something that was totally false. I'm getting, and not to disrespect him, but I got to keep it 100. So if Bruce Willis want to contact me, we could debate this, but I'm going to show you the facts from the Supreme Court documents that what he just said is wrong, and this is what they're using to railroad Diddy. They're trying to say, let Bruce say it. Hold up, man. Come on, Bruce.
They don't need to prove beyond a reasonable doubt every single one of the acts that was presented. They can pick and choose. Oh, I believe this one. I believe this one. I don't believe that one. I don't believe that one. Oh, but that one looks probably true. So they only need to pick one or two of them, and that's it.
False. Totally false. Now, the Supreme Court clearly makes it clear as far as what needs to be done. Now, you can't, hold up, man. Let me bring this in here so that we can see. Y'all can see this, right? Now, what I got highlighted says, the question before us, this is Supreme Court talking June 1st, 1999 in United States versus Richardson, where they used my case, United States versus Hall 93 F3D, to deny Eddie Richardson out in the Seventh Circuit. Now, when they used my case, they said they didn't have to be unanimous and specific as to which three violations is used to find me guilty of the CCE, which is the kissing cousin to the RICO. Now, when they said they didn't have to do it, that's the same thing you just heard brother Bruce Willis say. Bruce Willis, my bad. Bruce Ellis. No disrespect, Bruce. I don't know your name and I don't do no editing and all that. But this came across my Bruce Willis, whatever it is. But anyway, the Supreme Court said the question before us arise out of the trial court's instruction about the statute's series of violations requirement. The judge rejected Richardson's proposal to instruct the jury that it must unanimously agree on which three acts constitute the series of violations. Instead, the judge instructed the jurors that they must unanimously agree that the defendant committed at least three federal narcotics violations, while they added now, you do not have to agree as to the particular three or more federal narcotics offenses committed by the defendant. Even though we're saying, drug offense, narcotics offense, in the RICO is just anything that carries over a year and a day. That's equivalent to a drug offense when you're dealing with a RICO. Now, so he said that, you do not have to, agree as to the particular three or more federal narcotics offense committed by the defendant. Then he went up to appeal Eddie Richardson in the Seventh Circuit, and they ruled that they upheld the decision, and they said, the Supreme Court said, recognizing a split in the circuit on the matter, we granted certiorari. Compare United States versus Edmonds. That was Theodore Edmonds and Rayful Edmonds that just passed, right? They was comparing their case to my case because we was the three biggest ones back then that already went on appeal about this CCE and RICO issue. So now they said compare that where in Richardson and Edmonds, the judge said to the jury that they must unanimously agree as to which 3 violations constitute the series. Now, in my case, where it said compare Edmonds with Hall, United States versus Hall, 93 F3D. It's on this thing if you want to go look my case up. Unanimity with respect to particular violations is not required. So my circuit said that they wasn't allowed to use the violations, you know what I mean, that they didn't have to be specific as to which 3 violations, like what Brother Willis, what's his name? Let me get his name right, because I don't want y'all to feel like I'm disrespecting this man in no manner, because he's very intelligent and I love his show. Yeah, it's Bruce Rivers. That's it. Apologize, Bruce Rivers. So if I mess it up, don't even worry about it. You know, we all good. You call me Huey, you know, if you want. But anyway, so let me get back over here to this. So what we're dealing with is that they had to decide if they had to be specific. So it's none of what he just said. And I'm going to play that again so you can hear what he said after I just read that to you, so you know what we're talking about.
They don't need to prove beyond a reasonable doubt every single one of the acts that was presented. They can pick and choose. Oh, I believe this one. I believe this one. I don't believe that one. I don't believe that one. Oh, but that one looks probably true. So they only need to pick 1 or 2 of them, and that's it.
No. I couldn't let that stand, because that don't even make no sense for them to even say that, because that's how they got us back then. Back then, they railroaded us because they said that being that we was charged with the RICO or the CCE, that anything that our underlings did, meaning the people that was under our umbrella and at our direction and instruction, anything they did that we was responsible for. So now, like in my case, one of my co-defendants said he had a shootout because he left the club and, you know, the girl he was talking to, you know, man came to the club and they had a shootout. Now, what does that have to do with my case? He had a shootout over a piece of ass that I didn't get none of, you know, so that ain't got nothing to do with me, you know, so you can't use that as a predicate. But now, if they would have said that he was in the club and he saw a dude that owed him some money from the drugs that was sold to the person that was sent down by Unique, and then he had a shootout by him, now you could use that predicate. But because he got a piece of ass, got in the fight over the piece of ass, ain't got nothing to do with me, because I ain't even touch it. All right, now let's keep it moving. So that's where we at with that, so you understand. But you know, I want to get back to these documents one more time, because I want to explain to y'all what an element is, because that's the key. We know the RICO has 5 elements. He's even going to break that down. As a matter of fact, let me let him go from here, and then we'll get to it where he mentions it. But the RICO has 5 elements, and those have to be proven. Now, once they become elements, if they say that you violated the statute, that's one thing. But if they say that you committed a violation within the statute, then now, if that falls under an element, with a violation is an element, then they have to be unanimous and specific. And that's how Diddy would beat this case if I was Diddy's lawyer. But you know, what are they going to listen to a dude that been in jail 26 years, that been fighting the exact same thing for 26 years, took it all the way to the Supreme Court, won in the Supreme Court. But why would they listen to me? Because I won in the Supreme Court the same issue they fighting. This is how stupid this is to me. But we just having fun. All right, but let's ride. Now, you know, you sit there and you have these 5 violations, right? So if you have these violations, all 12 jury have to pick the exact same 2 violations for Diddy. They must, and that's the law. I'm telling you, I don't care what Bruce Rivers or anybody say, because I just showed you Supreme Court law, and I'm getting ready to show you some more of that lead case, United States versus Richardson, 143 F3D. Now, when you go look at that, it's going to break down what an element is and when do you have to be unanimous to an element. And that's what this is about. Now, everybody's wondering, why did the government throw out, you know, the attempt arson on Kid Cudi, you know, the part of the sex trafficking and whatever else they threw out. They threw them out because they're trying to narrow the choices of what the jury have to decide is the predicate acts for this RICO. If they had 100 acts that they had to pick and 12 people had to pick out of these 100 acts, it would be harder for all 12 to pick the exact same two if it was 100 choices. Am I right or wrong, y'all? You see how simple this is, but they don't want to tell you that. They play these little games. But then now, if they narrow them down, they only need two. So if they narrow them down to, let's say, 4 or 5, then they have a better ratio shot at the jury picking the exact same two. So they dropped off that Kid Cudi stuff. And then now what I see them doing, because we riding, now what I see them doing is saying, oh, you could use what Cassie say here. You get ready to see Bruce Rivers break that down. You get ready, you can use it. This one said there, that one said there. But then how do we know what they used if they don't have to mark it on the verdict sheet? That's why the Supreme Court said they had to be specific and unanimous. That means putting a whole nother, set of not guilty and guilty. So it'll say something like this. This is how it reads, right? Because Booby from the Booby Boys, that's where I got his transcripts from when they finally got it right after Richardson was with Booby from the Booby Boys. That's Kenneth Williams that Rick Ross talks about. If you don't know, me and Booby was in Coleman, and we studied our cases together. I remember when he went back to Miami after he won, the prosecution misconduct and things like that. But Booby will be coming home soon. And I'm telling you that. Be on the lookout for Booby. Booby will be coming home soon. But anyway, so in the verdict sheet, it said in the verdict sheet that, like RICO, 848. If you find the defendant guilty of RICO, you must first find what 3 predicates or 2 predicates they used you intend to use to trigger the conviction of this RICO. And then they check on the verdict sheet where the government lists exactly what they're trying to use. So they can't just say, like they did me back in 94, you can do whatever you want. Anything that anybody said they want. If he had a shootout over a girl in a club that ain't had nothing to do with Unique, just because he worked for Unique, you could use it. And I'm sitting there like, good gonna go. Oh yeah, this is sponsored by Cashbox. Be on the lookout for that. Should be August. They got a couple of things, they had to go over to make sure it was right so that you could have a safe, experience of sending your money where it's secured. So, bear with them. I know they're supposed to come out a few months ago, but they're looking at, mid-August, but it's definitely on fire. Big shout out to Omar Ellis and Ramaya. All right, they got this thing popping. Now, let's get back to Bruce Willis.
Really tough to go through 7 weeks of trial and sum it up into a short presentation that's going to keep somebody's attention. I tend not to go more than a half hour for my closing arguments. Very rarely do I go more than a half hour. Let's talk about the jury instructions and how that dovetails into what the government was doing. First, an enterprise existed. They have to prove that an enterprise existed. This is for RICO. And that's not going to be hard at all because you have employees, you have a structure, you have a corporation, and you have Diddy at the top telling everybody what the fuck to do. Very, very easy. 2, the enterprise was engaged in or had some effect on interstate commerce, crossing state lines. That's all they have to do. And they bringing hookers in from out of state satisfies that. 3, the defendant was associated with the enterprise. Well, it's his. It's Diddy. I mean, there's no question about that. So, and the 4th element is that that 2 or more persons reached an agreement or came to an understanding to conduct or participate in the affairs of the enterprise directly or indirectly, through a pattern of racketeering activity, and that the defendant voluntarily joined that, either at the time or sometime later. And it's his organization. So the only question here is really, the only question for the jury is whether there was a pattern of racketeering activity.
And those are the predicates. And the predicates are violations. Once it becomes a violation Under a predicate, now a unanimity instruction is warranted. And I'm going to show you why. See, that's how smooth I am. I know this like the back of my hand, but they don't understand. They see me on YouTube, say, he's just talking. Now, we're going to go down here and we're going to find out the question of the house, because we need always unanimity with several possible underlying brief facts, elements, say, with several possible defendant used to commit the element of the crime. Where, for example, an element of robbery, that's not what I want. The CCE, finally. All right, because they break down exactly what an element is, so you already know, right? You element is what you need. It's equivalent to, what would you say? Equivalent to ingredients. You know, it's equivalent to ingredients in a cake. And once it's ingredients in a cake, you already know what time it is. So we have to, you know, make sure we use exactly what it is. So if we baking a cake, you can't have a cake and say that it has it's supposed to have milk, egg, and flour, and you take out the milk and replace it with water. You bake the cake. It look like a cake, tastes like a cake, and you know, everything like a cake, but there's no milk. But that was the recipe. So you know, if you was in a cooking contest, you would automatically lose that, you know? So we're not even going to play that. So now that we have that understanding, let's go back over here. I couldn't find it. I don't want to waste the time. All right, let's go.
So then the fifth element is that the defendant voluntarily and intentionally joined in the agreement or understanding, either at the time it was first reached or sometime later. But I mean, the existence of the enterprise and the affairs of the enterprise and the conduct of the enterprise is all the diddler. There was a whole bunch of racketeering activity, or they call them overt acts, actually. The one thing that you really need to know, and the jury is going to be told this in their instructions, they don't need to prove beyond a reasonable doubt every single one of the acts that was
Yes, they do.
presented. They can pick and choose. Oh, I believe this one. I believe this one. I don't believe that one. I don't believe that one. Oh, but that one looks probably true. So they only need to pick one or two of them, and that's it.
No, that's not it. That's what we did at the beginning. So I'm going to go back. Maybe I could find the part that I'm looking for, but that's bull crap. Right there. The question before us arises out of trial court's instruction about the statute series of violations requirement. The judge rejected Richardson's proposal that the instruction that the jury must be unanimous in agreeing with the three acts constituting the series of violations. Instead, the instructions they instructed the jury that they must agree unanimously that they committed at least 3 or more federal narcotics. You really need to see this part about the elements. I think, let me see, I might be able to find it over here. I think it's in the summary of the case. Hold up, let me find the summary of the case. Where's this summary of this case at? Because y'all really need to see that. You know, y'all really need to see that. We're going to get that right. Bear with me here. We're going to find it. You know, we're going to find it. No, that's not the case brief. And Richardson, fine law. We try this one. Right here. Case summary. Okay, the constitutional language, tradition, unfair reading, the government's instructions. All right. So y'all really need to see that. I know y'all need to see that. Oh, let me try this one under that. It might be the all eyes one. It might be the all eyes one. All right. But you can't see it, so I can't use that. I want to use something you can see. You know. Okay, that's the syllabus to that. Constitutes the language, tradition. Violation means to hold that each violation here is okay. Here it is right here. Okay, considerations, right? See what I'm reading right here. Let me highlight it. Right? It says considerations of language, tradition, right? In other words, with consideration of the language, tradition, and the potential unfairness support of reading of the violations as an element rather than a means. Now, pay attention, because this is going to get, you know, really interesting here. So they're saying that they have to show that a violation, you know, as an element, you know what I mean, and not a means. If it's a means, they don't need to be unanimous. So say the government has not found any legal source reading any instance of the words violation or violations as means. In other words, they're trying to take the violations and make the means. If they make the means, then they don't have to be unanimous. But if they're violations and they're an element, then they have to be unanimous. And this is how Diddy is going to walk, whether it's, the judge wasn't supposed to even let it go back. If the judge get this verdict sheet and it don't have none of this on this, you know what I mean? He's supposed to throw the case out and say that whatever. Under legal standard, they didn't meet the burden. And what they're going to do is make Diddy go to appeal on it, but he will win it in appeal if it goes to an appeal. Now, let me break that down a little further. The government has not found any legal source reading any instance of the word violation or violations as means to hold that each violation here amounts to a separate element is consistent with a tradition of requiring jury unanimity, where the issue is whether a defendant has engaged in conduct that violates the law. Did y'all understand that? That's pretty self-explanatory. So now, but we're going to read it again so you understand. To hold that each violation here amounts to a separate element is consistent. So they say that the violations is consistent with the long court standing and the traditions of the court, to mean that a violation is an element which warrants unanimity. And they're saying that the prosecution in this Richardson case has not shown that nowhere in their briefs to them. So that now they come down to here. To hold to the contrary, right, is not. In other words, they're not going to hold to the government stance that a violation is a means. The CCE, which is equivalent to the RICO statute's breadth, right, aggregates the dangers of unfairness that treating each violation as a means would risk. So now they're breaking down the unfairness that if they was to treat the violations without making them have to be unanimous, and the violations is also an element, they're putting the defendant at risk for them to do exactly what Bruce Rivers just said, that they could pick this, pick that, pick this, pick that. Bruce Rivers, whenever you want, no disrespect. Let me put my number up here because it's not to disrespect you. You could give me a call. We could debate this in private or whatever, but I don't do videos bashing nobody. I just enlighten the people. All right. So now let's get back to this. So we know that's there, right? Let me see. Do you want to have to make changes? No. Okay, so now, to hold to the contrary is not. The CCE/RICO statute's breadth aggravates the dangers of unfairness that treat each violation as a means would cause at risk. The statute's word, they talk about in the statute, the word violations covers many different kinds of behavior of varying degrees of seriousness. They mean like from drug dealing to murder, The two chapters of the Federal Criminal Code setting forth drug crimes contain approximately 90 numbered sections, many of which prescribe various acts that may be alleged as violations for purpose of the 848 series requirement. This consideration increases the likelihood that treating violations simply as alternative means by permitting a jury to avoid discussion of the specific factual details of each violation will cover up wide disagreement among the jurors about just what the defendant did or did not do. Now, so what they're saying is, to take away the violation and make the violations a means which don't warrant unanimity on the verdict will put the defendant at a terrible misadvantage, because it would take away from the jury the right and the direction to be specific and unanimous to exactly what the defendant did or didn't do. You can't say that I'm gonna, in the Diddy case, you can't say we're gonna use what Cassie said over here, and we're gonna use what Brandon said over here, and we're gonna use what Jane Doe said over here. You know what I mean? But they don't mark it down anywhere on the sheet, so the judge could look at it, and the defense and the prosecution could look at it and say, hold up, which three did you use? Go back and you have to be specific as to which three. If they don't go through this, he gonna lose. End of story, but he'll win on appeal, So make sure you subscribe to my daughter's YouTube channel at Juanita Mecca Audio. Now let me finish. Moreover, the government may seek to prove that a defendant has been involved in numerous underlying violations, significantly aggregating the risk that jurors will fail to focus on the specific factual details unless required to do so. So that's why they're saying that the jury have to be instructed to focus on the particular violations, not this random, they could pick this, pick that, pick this and that. No, you have to be specific and unanimous to at least 2 violations for the RICO. And that's where Diddy would have beat it hands down if they didn't start pulling out charges. So they need 2, so they don't want to list more than 5. If they list more than 5, then they have a chance at them picking, different ones, and one of them just not agreeing with somebody, and that would throw out the RICO. Watch what I tell you. All right, mark my words. Now, specifically aggravate the risk to particular fact unless required to do so. So finally, this court has indicated that the Constitution itself limits a state's power to define crimes in ways that would permit jurors to convict while disagreeing about means, at least where the definition risks serious unfairness and lacks support in histories of tradition, period. The government's arguments was interpreting violations as means that the words constituted serious focus on the enterprise, not on the particular violations that constituted the business. See, that's what I'm saying. That's why they're saying that this one have to do that, that one have to do this. That's the way the whole thing play out. But we've been on here long enough. Matter of fact, let's play some more Bruce Willis, man. Let's play some more Bruce Willis.
I mean, and that's why racketeering or RICO is such a broad net, which is just crazy. I mean, it's just absolutely crazy how easy it is for the government to prove their case. These instructions I just read you came from a case that I just tried a couple months ago or a month ago. So the closing argument is so when you do, let's start at the beginning. An opening statement is when you foretell what the case is going to be about. The evidence in this case will show blah, 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 right? And so the closing argument is just the opposite of that. You can't argue in your opening, but you argue in your closing. Okay, does that make sense? The defense didn't put on a case, and like I said, you can't hold that against him. And the defendant did not testify. Big fucking surprise there that Diller didn't testify. There was
no need for Diddy to testify. If you're a lawyer, you're doing a case, and they put on this crap that they put on against Diddy, any smart lawyer would just say, you don't even need to say nothing because they did not prove the RICO. Period. What does he need to get up there and explain what the baby oil was for? Okay, Diddy, why did you have all that baby oil? You know what I mean? Man, because I like to be early. You know what I mean? Is it a crime to be early? Is it a crime to, have 1,000 bottles of baby oil? I mean, that's how ludicrous this is. But for social media and content creating, they did everybody a favor. Everybody got a big, let's get Leo Cohen a round of applause from, YouTube breaking everybody off. But that's how simple this is. Calm down. That's how simple this is that I want y'all to really understand what's going on, man. All right, let's get back to this.
It's going to be absolutely filleted. So the position of and at the close of the government's case, the defense moved for a judgment of acquittal. It's a Rule 29 motion. And guess what? It went, they're almost never granted. I mean, I've had it granted, I think, 2 or 3 times.
No, stop it. He almost got it granted. That's why they had to go back there and start pulling out the predicates they intended to use. Let's stop it. That's how they wound up dropping those charges and coming up with the defense that we're going to limit it to like maybe 5 predicates to choose from. Because if we list 10 predicates, then we opening up the scope of maybe 1 out to 11 picking something else so we could narrow it down as tight and condensed as we can. Then maybe we could get, you know, the same two to pick the same two. So let's get that right. He had them by the balls. That's why they even started throwing them out. I've never seen a case where at the end of a trial, they start throwing out charges, especially the main charges, the arson and all that. He blew up Kid Cudi's car because he was pussy whoop on Cassie, and Cudi was tapping the cootie. You know what I mean? That ain't got nothing to do with RICO. That's the same thing like I just used the metaphor where my co-defendant goes to a club, Club Ivory's, let's say in Richmond, Virginia, back in the 80s, and he gets in a shootout up there, you know? And then he gets in the shootout over a female, you know, that he's screwing and her man is in the club. That ain't got nothing to do with me. They can't bring that in my trial and say that they could use it as a predicate. But the crazy part is they could bring that in my trial if my co-defendant is going to trial with me and say that my co-defendant did that because he's sitting there. But then they'll let them know, but they can't use that as an overt act or predicate act. An overt act is something that shows the course of the acts that you use to violate the statute to move the conspiracy forward, but there's no verdict warranted on an overt act. But there is a verdict warranted on a predicate act. And Congress and the Senate and the president signed off back in like 1970 when they created this statute saying that the violations was predicates. Then over years, when they started using it, the prosecutors got real lax with it, like Bruce Rivers, and said, oh, you can just use anything you heard. Bruce, you know what that felt like when I sat there going to trial and they told me they could use anything. There was one dude was talking about he had a fight with his girl and he beat her up. You know what I mean? I don't even know girl. I don't know his girl. I don't know him. I didn't even know my co-defendants. But they said, now your brother gave the drugs to these men, and even though they don't know you, the chain of command, like the different separations of Bacon, you know, Kevin Bacon, that type of thing. Because it was my drugs, gave it to my brother gave it to these 5 other people, so I'm responsible for whatever these 5 other people do or whatever they do, even if they ever shoot out over a girl in the club. That's what Bruce Rivers is saying, and that's what they tried to tell me back when I got locked up, and I told them I wasn't going for it, and I fought that joint for 26 years, and I'm here to tell you all the hard facts right now. That's bull crap. They trying to tell you. They have to show which violation made up the RICO predicates. And under Richardson, making the elements of a crime, any crime, right? Making the violation an element is equivalent to making it unanimous, which is its own trial. Cash App is on the screen. Make sure you hit the, when you put it in, hit the icon and then say the account was created in 2020. All right, got to say it was created in 2020. Let's go on, Bruce.
My career on very serious cases. But Diddy didn't testify, right? And I don't know how he could, honestly. I mean, he gave that, and I don't know if it came in. I'm sure it probably came in where he gave the mea culpa on his he looks like he's in a fucking hut. We'll show it to you here in a second.
It's so difficult to reflect on the darkest times in your life. Sometimes you got to do that. I was up. I mean, I hit rock bottom, but I make no excuses. My behavior on that video is inexcusable. I take full responsibility for my actions in that video.
You know, I mean, look at him. I mean, he's giving a mea culpa. You know, I'm so sorry. You know, it's a public relations thing. You know,
how do you know it's a public relation thing? This man said he was hooked on drugs. Everybody said he was hooked on drugs like people get hooked on phonics. You know, the women testified, everybody testified. You're saying he's supposed to go up there and what is he going to say different than what they said? They said the truth. They was in a relationship with him. They were screwing him. You know, they liked the freak off. Sometimes they didn't want to do the freak off, but they did the freak off just to satisfy him. You know what I mean? Come on. You know, they asked whooping with Cassie. You know, he said that she would leave him because, and she took his jewelry or something like that to leave with it. I mean, that don't give him no excuse, but I'm just saying that, you know, that wasn't forcing her to stay. That's forcing her to bring the damn jewelry back. You know what I mean? And that's a violation. Lock his ass up for beating her up for trying to, get the jewelry back. The same way they did O.J. Simpson. When O.J. Simpson went up there and tried to go get his Heisman back after they done repoed it, in the settlement against the Goldbergs, he went up there and tried to take his joint back with a pistol, and all of a sudden he got a charge for going up there trying to take the joint with his pistol. So Diddy should be charged for whooping Cassie's ass for trying to leave with the jewelry. But how does that falls into he forced her? And then, like they said, I'll probably do another video after this where they mention it all the time. Oh, I love you. I miss you. Oh, I want to have a freak off. Oh, I feel like this one. Oh, let me call and set this up. After hearing all of that, you can find a man guilty? When these women was down with this? Whether they're down with it for $1 or a donut, they were down with it. And none of them was charged. None of them is sitting next to him as a co-defendant. But send him to jail because they decided to testify against him. So if he would have decided to testify against them, with all of with J. Doe, Cassie, and all of them be sitting up there, can you imagine? Did he say, yeah, they took my money and didn't perform right? That's how crazy it sounds. Let's keep this moving.
He at that time he was doing that. He didn't talk to any lawyers about making that statement. I don't know why the fuck that was so stupid, especially in light of everything that was coming down the pike, right? So
bottom line is, it wasn't stupid. What it was is he should have just did that from she first came out and sued him. He should just broke off the money and then went up there and did a public apology to it, and everybody could have dealt with it. Instead, he said emphatically, I had nothing to do with it. I'm P. Diddy. I'm the most honest man in the world. They're lying. And that was the biggest mistake. Just tell the truth. You was ussy whooped. You was high. You screwed all the way up. You violated to the 100,000 times a millionth degree by putting your hands on that woman for any reason. Especially when you got $1 billion. You could have bought another set of jewelry that you felt she was taking. Now look where all that got you, because your pride and ego got in the way. Your pride and ego is the #1 downfall. Now let's get back to Bruce.
He admitted that he did something wrong in that video. So I would be shocked if that didn't.
Yeah, he whooped her. We seen that. Even without us seeing it, he should have just came clean and just apologized, just like he said he could have apologized to everything and would have been able to leave out the video. Or even if he mentioned the video, once the video came out, they would have known that he came clean, and that would show remorse. You don't come out after something is exposed and say, oh, I'm sorry. But when they accused her of you, they said it didn't happen. That's why people turned against him. But now, after watching this mockery that they're doing, because I want to know where, I thought they were going to have Leonardo DiCaprio, what's the other boy name? Show me the money boy, Gooden. You know what I mean? Come on. I thought you got all these people up there. Chris Brown, Justin Bieber, Usher. Where's these names? Kim Kardashian. Didn't they say she was one of his? Why wasn't she charged? Just a question. Let's get back to Bruce.
Come into trial. I don't know if it did or not, but he is such a damaged client or defendant. I just don't know how, you want to keep your client off the stand if at all possible. But when you have he said, she said, it's my practice to have my client normally testify.
Man, that's some stupid ass shit, Bruce. I gotta say that. And I respect you, but from a street point of view, that's some stupid ass shit. Who the hell is gonna go with a bunch of he said, she said? That's what your job is. To speak for me. I don't need to go up there, because what they're going to do is open up, and what I'm saying is right, Bruce. They're going to open up what they call a Pandora's box. You know what I mean? Something that wasn't even allowed in the trial. They might elude over to, what happened the day of your arrest. Did you contact Brandon Paul? You know what I mean? And now you got to answer all this Brandon Paul stuff. But if he don't get on the stand, you don't have to answer it, or anything else they might want to try and bring in. That's why you stay off the stand, dog. Because you open up Pandora's box, you go on the stand. If you feel, and you know this for a fact, Bruce, never will I disrespect your gangster. I'm just speaking from a street point of view, with nothing but love and respect. You got an excellent show. But, if you feel that the government did not prove its case, you're not going to tell your client to go up there and give them more information. This trial, for real, Bruce, this is just an opener so that these witnesses can go back now and re-sue Diddy and use the testimony from this as binding because it was done under oath. So we're going to have a whole bunch more lawsuits come out of everything that was said. Even the brother, what they call him, the Punisher. The Punisher could sue Diddy for, let's say hypothetically, unpaid wages. The Punisher could say, I'm worth $10,000 a screw right now. And he's like, nah, I'm the one that discovered you. You're worth that now because you got on at my trial. And then the Punisher can say, yeah, but I'm going to go to court, see if they can make it retroactive. Retro means if we can bring it all the way back to when, I first began for you. This is how stupid this is. They weren't about what a man did in his bedroom. They weren't about what the women did in the man's bedroom. And the women is saying, I like it. They're texting, come get me. Oh, I'm so horny. Oh, remember that drop? Me so horny, me so horny. I mean, come on. Once you see all that, all you need is a reasonable doubt. So it's not saying that the women is lying. No one is there, none of that. But all I'm saying is all of that is what leaves a reasonable doubt that they could be, or maybe they're telling the truth. They might be lying about this, so I don't know if I'm going to believe that. That's called a reasonable doubt. That's why they say that you have to be found guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. There's so much, everything that we sitting here debating, all you rat bastards and flip-flop wearing and public trolls that's sitting there looking for something to hate on, just keep it 100. Just keep it 100. Let's finish with Bruce.
Because if he doesn't testify, they only hear one story. And you can't necessarily destroy somebody.
It's your job to tell the other story, Bruce.
On cross-examination if they're compelling. Like Cassie Ventura was compelling.
Very
you watch
compelling.
that video and then hear her talk.
She was very compelling. And then we saw a text where she said, me so horny and I need a big black. And let me get the Punisher. Let me get the executioner. I feel like a what they call it, threesome. I feel like a freak off tonight. She was. That's the reasonable doubt, Bruce. You know that. Stop making these videos, y'all, trying to just convict him. Forget Diddy. Take it out of it. We want the people to learn what you have to go through when you get involved with breaking these laws. That's why we say, which I know you do as well, Bruce, do not break the law. Do not get involved with breaking the law. Don't come off the porch and stop it. Go to school, get your education, or you got to listen to people debate your case like this when you become a billionaire. All because you decided to sell drugs and you get locked up and then they take the $1 billion from you. Let's not forget, if Diddy found guilty of this, then they're going after them companies. So everybody, Diddy gonna be guilty, they're gonna be guilty. Okay, but then they're going after his company. Now, what easier way to get a man's company than to bring him up on the X charge? Go, all you need is a woman to say this happened 50 years ago and I can't sleep with myself no more. No more evidence than that. Come on, man. Let's keep this thing moving.
And then other people corroborated what she had to say. Compelling stuff.
All you need is a reasonable doubt, Bruce.
Mr. Diddy, isn't it true that he had over 1,000 bottles of baby oil? I mean,
yeah, I had 1,000 bottles of baby oil. I like to be oily. Is it illegal to be oily?
And you go on and on and on and pound.
And that's why he wouldn't need to get up there, because they'll ask him stupid shit like that.
Pound him on cross-examination. The decision to have him not testify was the right decision. No question in my mind.
Thank you. At least he admitted it. No way in hell should Diddy have got up on that stand, especially after that whack evidence they proved. We already know they proved that Diddy whoop a woman's head. That he's a woman beater. They proved that. You know what I mean? They proved that he liked to get high. They proved that he spent money and he supplied the drugs to the women that wanted to get high, and they took them by their choice. We proved that he's the biggest freak that we ever seen, period. He's the biggest freak we ever seen. They proved that. But what does that have to do with a RICO? Should he lose his $1 billion enterprise because he's the biggest freak? And because he had 1,000 bottles of baby oil? Because that's what they're going at right now. That's the next trial after this if he's found guilty. I just want y'all to understand what's really going on and what's at stake here.
Right. But what do they do on in their closing? They're going to talk about consent. They're going to talk about all kinds of other things.
Yeah, he was in a relationship with these women. They got in a bad attitude. They broke up because he wanted something younger. I used to read, let's ride. I used to read a lot of Jackie Collins books, right? Every time I read a Jackie Collins book, they always have it where the old rich movie stars in Hollywood, they always kept a 20-something-year-old wife. They were 60, 70 years old with a 20-something-year-old wife, and the girl became 28, you know what I mean? They got rid of her, and they went backwards and got another 21, 22-year-old. That's what I read. You know what I mean? So that now we got all this going on that this is what they're doing in Hollywood. So now Diddy picks this Hollywood behavior up, and he felt Cassie was getting too old. When he got with her, she was 18, 19, where his mind was at. That's what he wanted. She became 24, 25. She started, schooling the trainer dude, and then Young Miami came in, Young Virgil and Hyper and Miami Flavor, and was down for whatever. So he grabbed her, leave Cassie. Cassie get mad, leave with the dude. They wound up getting broke. You know what I mean? After they get broke, then now she go back to stay with her mama. While she's staying with her mama, then here she goes. She said about tell Diddy, I'm writing a tell-all book. If you don't give me $30 million, I'm going to put this book out because we dead broke and I'm living in my mama's house. And that's where Diddy want to tell her, well, come here for a freak off. Come here for one last freak off. I'll give you the $30 million and bring that contract with you. You know what I mean? She gonna get the little $30 million, go back, and then when she spent the $30 million, she could have went back and said, yo, let's do another freak off for $50 million this time. But she blew all of that for the $20 million, $30 million, and she got the one time. Diddy would have continuously gave it to her. He's in love with her. You see, they're all still in love with each other. This is a love affair, like the lawyer said, that just went public, a twisted love affair. We ain't living like that. That ain't our version of love. Let's get that straight. But to each his own. If that man comfortable watching Big Joe Blow with the Donkey Kong slamming his Jane, that's on him. Jane could have just said, I ain't down with that. Click. Instead, Jane hung out, left, came back, said, I did it because I wanted to make him happy. You couldn't have taken nothing else to do to make him happy? Oh, you couldn't have bought him no cufflinks because he has everything. So what else did you make him happy? Stay away from him, let him miss you so he'll call you and do something. Come on, man.
You shouldn't believe this person. You shouldn't believe that person. This case is politically motivated. The government in this case only showed you what they wanted you to see. That's the kind of stuff you're going to hear. And it's all bullshit.
No, it's not bullshit. The government going to show what they want you to see, and they're not doing anything wrong by doing that. So we're not saying the government is wrong. They put on an excellent case. They did their thing. But the defense is also going to put on just what they want you to see. That's what a trial is about. Both sides putting on what they want you to see so that they could sway you and manipulate you to see their picture and buy their movie. Diddy's trying to sell the greatest script of his life for his freedom right now. And the government is trying to get their greatest promotion of their life. You know what these prosecutors are going to look like? They get a conviction on Diddy. Man, he could run for mayor, governor, president by saying, I brought down P. Diddy.
Let's just call a spade a spade. Was there any challenge to the drugs? No. Was
he charged with the drugs? No. So why should he challenge the drugs, Bruce? Come on, Bruce. Stop the crap, man. You sound like a Diddy hater right now. And take Diddy out of it. Let's just enlighten the people. You know what I mean? He wasn't charged with drugs. What the heck he got to say anything about drugs for? There's not a drug charge on his indictment.
Was there any challenge that people came in from out of state? No. Was there?
Yeah, well, and so what should he go up there and say? They didn't come out? Come on, Bruce.
Was there any challenge that people got paid to have sex with Cassie from out of state? No.
Why? Okay, exactly. Because that's exactly what happened. And you got escorts and people doing the same thing they doing as we speaking right now, Bruce. Man, I gotta end this because this is getting stupid. And Bruce, I respect you. I love your show. So I'm not doing that, but I just get a little emotionally caught up when I see the system working like it's working against Diddy right now. And then people like you going up there twisting the words to try and make the people. You convicted them before the verdict even come out. You as an attorney should have just fell back and waited. But we understand it's YouTube. You got to create content, but then just stay neutral, family. Just stay neutral. Because I don't give a crap if Diddy get life in jail, if he get the death penalty. That's not my business. He ain't do nothing for me. And I don't give a crap about nobody that don't do nothing for me. Let's get that straight. But bottom line is we got to wake the babies up so they see how serious this is, man. All this stuff we heard about Diddy with the minors, where's the minors? Where's this big freak-off tapes? I seen girls with fruits on them and girl get on YouTube and said that was her. Where's she at? Oh, that wasn't enough for a criminal case. Going to criminal court was enough to damage a man's character and his image and his brand so that he got to kick out his pocket to try and save his brand. But now this man is on trial trying to save his life, his freedom. I'm out of here. Subscribe to my daughter's YouTube channel. I need to make audios on the screen. We really appreciate your time and thank you for coming in. All right.
Cheers, cheers, toast the crime, toast the crime, the crime, the crime, the crime.
Fresh out the can of 26, he back on the strip, getting back in the mix. What he mentions a gift. You stand up 10 toes down, and I suggest you pay attention to this. Take a little gully posse and put it in Harlem. He cut from the bottom, came up from the bottom. Drop the book, you should go and get it. The Instagram page and the YouTube, you could go and visit. Then you could consider yourself linked in. Sit front row and get Jews from a kingpin. How he went through it, so you ain't gotta go do it. To not pay attention would be stupid. Talking about a man that probably put your grandfather on. Probably the reason that him and your grams got along. A man that generated millions on the block, did his time, never squilling to the cops, Mecca audio.
Mecca what? Mecca audio. Mecca what? Mecca audio. Mecca what? Mecca audio. Mecca what? Mecca audio. And we gon' do it like we gon' do it like we keep it moving like we gotta do it like
Get it live like 2 G's in the night. Drop top beamer so shiny. I let shorty go, she was wine. Treat her like my past, she behind me. Spend a couple bands on the dapper Dan. You be back again, getting green like a Packers fan. No cap, it's a roaring uptown. They be horn uptown, Dominican bust downs. Now we on the positive, we got a lot to give. Now he trying to stop the kids from being inoperative. So take heed, homie, lend an ear. He started in uptown, he gon' finish dead. But now it ain't about selling drugs, buying cars. It's about buying property to make the community yours, so we can get back to the
cheers, cheers, toast the crime, the crime, the crime, the crime, the crime.